We are recording.
Okay, thank you very much, Romina. Good morning to everybody. This is Raúl Abril, European Commission. Let me do the opening of this webinar. This is going to be on the two vocabularies, core vocabularies that we have under the CAMSS portfolio, which are the core standards and specifications vocabulary and the core assessment vocabulary. As you know, the CAMSS portfolio is also part of the Interoperability Architecture Solutions portfolio of the European Commission. This webinar comes after a number of very, very successful webinars. And today we are going to address what I would position as a part of the kernel of the interoperability architecture solutions, because they have a nuclear role in terms of providing support the rest of the interoperability architecture solutions. In this case, the core vocabularies. And as you will see during the presentation, the webinar, these two core vocabularies, they influence enormously the other solutions like the EIRA library of interoperability specifications and all the assessments that we perform. Another comment that I would like to introduce is to give you the confidence of the robustness of those two solutions. They have been basically in production for a number of years, and it's important. You will see the genesis because they were produced and validated together with colleagues in NATO, actually by the Committee of Standards in NATO. So that's all, and I wish that you have a very enjoyable webinar. The floor is yours, Romina.
Thank you very much for this opening, Raúl. And I believe we can proceed. So today, as Raúl was also mentioning, we have quite some interesting topics to address related to the CAMSS vocabulary, starting with a bit of the purpose motivating this session, moving on with the context of the CAMSS vocabularies and specifically what they are, and how they are related to other solutions under the interoperable realm, such as the EIRA Library of Interoperability Specifications, and also the potential of these vocabularies related to interoperability. And finally, last but not least, some Q&As. Starting with the motivation, some has already been anticipated. The idea behind this webinar is indeed to continue the successful stream of webinars where we showcase the different solutions under the CAMSS portfolio and in support of interoperability architecture. And this is also the reason we would like to present you CAMSS vocabularies, starting with the context. So you will see some key interoperability concepts that it's important to understand better before digging deeper into the core assessment vocabulary and the core standards and specification vocabulary. There are also some synergies that we'd like to present to you because they are not standalone vocabularies. They actually interconnect with multiple CAMSS solutions or solutions for interoperability, specifically ELIS. And beyond that, there is also a potential related to other contexts of interoperability, would say like kind of trendy topics, specifically in this case, the Interoperable Europe Act, and more specifically, the interoperability assessment. In this view, also we would like to share that this is not the last session of webinars we have planned. We have this is the second series actually of webinars that started end of last year with a successful webinar about the CAMSS incompatibility scenario, one of our newest solutions, and you can then check it out. We're going to share this presentation and the recording with you, and you can of course freely access to that session as well. To today we're gonna present the CAMSS vocabularies, and we have other webinars, other sessions planned here, as you can see, where we're gonna present other solutions. Some of them you may have a glimpse already in this session. Starting then with the context behind CAMSS vocabularies, we believe like there are some contexts that are very interesting to be presented, starting with CAMSS indeed. So you might know, but just to remind, CAMSS stands for is the Common Assessment Method for Standards and Specification, meaning it's a solution developed by the European Commission, DG, that provides a guidance for the assessment, for the selection, and also for the justification of both standards and specifications that are used in e-government projects, specifically when related to references that then build ICT architectures. In this sense, CAMSS offers a really broad set of solutions of assets and already assessed specifications in that way, so that they can respond to pressure, needs and requirements related to interoperability, mostly targeting, but not only, public administration and digital service providers. Some of you may know these challenges already. So the fact that they need to avoid vendor lock-in situations, or also whenever you need to engage in procurement, public procurement for interoperable ICT solutions, this can also come up in help. There is also crosswise a need to make the different digital services interact among themselves in the smoothest way possible without having any type of electronic barrier. And here again, standardized and properly assessed specifications are brought into play to ensure this. And last but not least, when it comes to having technical specification and standards also at national level, not only at European level, it's important to have them properly evaluated to make sure that they are compliant with the most recent European frameworks for interoperability, like the EIF. Another important concept related to interoperability and to the CAMSS vocabularies is EIRA. In this case, we're talking about the European Interoperability Reference Architecture. This is another solution developed at the European Commission by DG. And in this case, we're talking about a template or a blueprint that supports you with a recommended guidelines for the design and the implementation of systems. In other words, EIRA helps you to design and also structure the digital public services in a way that they become and they are interoperable by design. This is indeed the focus on EIRA regarding its unit of analysis, meaning the digital public service. How to do so? EIRA provides you and is formed by different architecture building blocks that include and entail those key requirements and capabilities that must be considered to ensure interoperability, and more specifically interoperability according to the views defined by the European Interoperability Framework, meaning the legal interoperability, so regarding the application of the legislation. Then we have the organizational interoperability. This is mostly focused to the business requirements, any type of organizational structure. And then, as previously mentioned with CAMSS, we have the semantic interoperability, most related to the standardization of data or a common format for the exchange, and then the technical interoperability. And in this case, we refer to any technical protocols or any technical need to exchange data. With that in mind, EIRA can specifically support you in two key use cases, as you can see in the slide. So starting with the analysis of the requirement and the understanding of any actually interoperability challenge to that you may come on the way, so that stakeholders in general, architects or any policymakers, any actor involved in the design and structure of digital public services can rely on EIRA to understand specific needs. And there is also another use case related to the design of digital public services. And in this case, thanks to the already inner compliance with European interoperability standards, you can make sure that by using EIRA that you facilitate and also complying with an harmonized way of designing systems and digital services. EIRA is actually also related to the third and another important concept that you will then see later related to core vocabularies, the CAMSS vocabularies, and this is ELIS. ELIS stands for the EIRA Library of Interoperability Specifications. So here we're referring to another solution related to both CAMSS and EIRA, and in this case we refer to a catalog. So that lists standards and specification related to interoperability, but also that are linked to EIRA architecture building blocks. In other words, here EIRA provides you with already a predefined set, a library of specifications that can then be implemented to implement solution building blocks, and then can also be reused. This is specifically of help, of support when it comes to modeling solutions based on already EU and reliable solutions like EIRA. And indeed, this is one of the main characteristics of ELIS to support architects in these modeling scenarios, modeling situation. As a library, it also already includes specifications, but not only the general ones. There are also some specifications that are already evaluated with CAMSS assessment, with a CAMSS assessment methodology, and in this case also a scenario that is based on the European interoperability framework. That way, you come up with an already centralized database of all the necessary interoperability requirements that are associated to the different EIRA APPs. And this is already consistently and extensively documented. And last but not least, EIRA also supports in the assessment of specification by providing a main criterion to include these specifications and consequently their assessment. As you can see here, there is a percentage that sets the criterion for inclusion, but there are also different ranges on which you can understand and classify the assessment process. This range of percentages, as well as some metrics that you can see on the right of the slide, are available also online publicly and also always up to date in the ELIS dashboard. These key concepts in mind, we can delve more into the CAMSS vocabularies and what they are, and beginning actually with the origins. Raul was also mentioning that in the introduction. CAMSS vocabularies, so both the core assessment vocabularies and the core standards and specification vocabulary, have come through a long journey of evolution in order to learn but also improve from already existing world level SOCIS standards. And originally, in fact, there was one CAMSS vocabulary only, but then with the objective of evolving this vocabulary, the European Commission approached NATO, and specifically the Standardization Committee of NATO. And why? Because it was considered as a maturity benchmark when it comes to identifying and assessing all standards and specifications in an operational fit scenario. And thanks to this collaboration between the European Commission and NATO, it was possible to evolve the vocabularies from one indistinctive one to more specific ones, so CAV, and also the validation of the code standards specifications vocabularies. But for these details, I'm going to leave the floor to my colleague Mario.
Thank you, Romina. Good morning, everyone. This is Mario Bravo, and I'm presenting the CAMSS vocabularies as part of the CAMSS team. So let's go to the next slide, Romina.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the CAMSS vocabularies? Well, when we talk about the CAMSS vocabularies, we are referring to the core assessment vocabulary and also the core standards and specifications vocabulary. And what is their purpose? Well, although they were initially designed to facilitate system integration, data publishing, and the designing of new IT systems for public administrations, they are indeed vocabularies that are context neutral, meaning that they could be applied in any domain. And if I go one by one, we start by the core assessment vocabulary by stating that we can represent any kind of assessment of any type of an asset. And how is this done? Well, this vocabulary defines not only the assessment concept, but also defines how this assessment could be performed against a set of criteria, which is also a concept which is defined in the vocabulary. And for the next one, the core standards and specifications vocabulary, what it pretends is to describe what a standard or specification is, and also describe the connections that may exist among them. And we will see lately how they both intertwine in a concrete example. But before that, we would like to show you a more technical view, and also to show you the kind of what was the initial aim in the design of these vocabularies. Just to highlight that these core vocabularies are included in the CEMIC Support Center, and as it is, what we've done is to adapt all these two CAMSS vocabularies to the CEMIC style guide over the years. So if we go to the next slide, then let's go more in deep about the core assessment vocabulary. Well, in practice, what we've done is to follow two fundamental principles. The first one of them is about reusing existing vocabularies. For this aim, well, we were following standards following the principle for standardization. We follow and we reuse some really recognized standards such as the DCAT vocabulary, but also some Europeans from the CEMIC team, which are the core criteria and core evidence vocabulary, for example, so that we promote this semantic interoperability among the solutions that we want to implement by applying this vocabulary itself. And the second principle is about the definition of rules and make a sort of vocabulary that self-explains, in the sense that we want to stick to a flexible and a cost-saving quality, so that we really can call them a core vocabulary. Well, going more deeply into the vocabulary, it is important to state that apart from the definition of the concepts that are involved in this vocabulary, we use different approaches. We have defined a specification related to this vocabulary, so that we can define them in different contexts. So to start with, this is important to notice, because on the web, for example, we need to represent this vocabulary in one way or the other. So as the usual standardization process needs, we use the old language so that we can represent this vocabulary in a machine readable format. And so I show you in this diagram below the way we do it. So for example, I was introducing you before the concept of asset, and this asset is represented as a class. In the old language, we can represent classes, we can represent properties and attributes, so that we can do it a way that machines can process all this type of information. And at the same time, we can state things like this asset is a subclass of another type of of another class from another vocabulary, as it is stated here. So an asset is a subclass of a data set from the DCAT. And at the same time, we can say that some of these elements can be documented in by a property. So what we are going to do now, Romina, can we go next slide? I'm going to deep a little bit more on this specification of the vocabulary, and also I'm going to present you the HTML format, which is the most friendly way we have to depict the specification itself. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so let's go. I think I'm sharing with you right now. Then, okay, so this specification is published in the Interoperable Euro portal. And well, as every solution in this portal, we have different solution components, among which we have the T-box, where we define all the old classes to define the vocabulary, but also we have the PDF version, we have the UML of the model, and of course we have this HTML format that I'm going to present you. So if we click on it, we will be redirected to this page. So I'm going through it. This page, we publish it in GitHub, so we are following the CEMIC style guide. And we try to emulate the format they use. Basically, this is the specification. We have all the release components as well. We have the release date. We have the abstract, the different elements that form this specification. And if we scroll down, we jump to the diagram itself. So let's have a look at it a little bit more closer. So as you may see, there are different classes depicted in the diagram. And in the central part, in the up side of the diagram, we have like a central class, which is the assessment class. This is our main class in the core assessment vocabulary. And as you may see, it is defined by different attributes. So we are reusing, as I was mentioning before, some of the vocabularies that are really recognized, widely recognized in the European Commission. So for example, we are using the DC terms vocabulary to describe the assessment, but also we provide a title and other different property attributes. And again, we have other different classes. So as you may notice, there are colors. We wanted to remark the core assessment vocabulary main classes by the orange color. So as you may see, there is the asset concept, there is also the statements, there are the scenario, the evaluation context, and a score. And if we go, I don't know, we can describe other surrounding classes. We could go to maybe the left side of the diagram, where we have the light blue color. So these classes are representing the DCAT vocabulary. And what would we do with this? Well, by using, again, properties represented by the old language, well, we can explain that an assessment is assessing, or in other ways, assesses a resource, a DCAT resource. So for us, for example, that could be, in the CAMSS context, would be a standard or a specification. And at the same time, what can we do with the assessment? Well, this assessment has a report, and it also has a summary, and we can produce a distribution to create any kind of document, such as a Word document, a PDF. So I don't know if you follow the logic, but this is the aim of the definition of the properties. And if we go, I don't know, to the right side of the diagram, for example, we have another dark color, which is the dark blue color, that is for the core criterion core evidence vocabulary. And we are reusing here the class criterion, which at the end, what we've done is to orchestrate all these criteria in a set that we call the scenario. And what is important to mention here? Well, this assessment is only possible to be contextualized by a set of criteria, which at the end is what represents the class scenario. So this is really interesting for us because allows us to develop different solutions in the CAMSS context, but also it is really relevant in the context of digital assessments. Okay. We could be following, we could be describing a bit more, but I think we can jump into the next specification. But before that, just to finish this overview, we have scrolling down the web, we have the different classes listed. Also, we have the properties and the attributes where you all can access publicly and leave any comments or in the GitHub page, issue page, or wherever. So I'm going to stop sharing, Romina. And we are jumping to the core standards and specifications vocabulary. Again, we are reusing the same fundamental principles as the CAV, the core assessment vocabulary. And again, we are reusing existing vocabularies such as the DCAT again, also the DC terms. And also we try to stick to make them more context neutral as possible, this other vocabulary, because at the end, what we want is to clearly adapt this vocabulary to any domain. And again, we have a specification for this vocabulary, and we use the old language to define all the classes, attributes, properties. So in this diagram, for example, we are replicating what we saw in the core assessment vocabulary. We can define class specifications, which at the same time is a subclass of the DCAT dataset. And this specification can be described. And by this, we are using the DC terms description attributes. So what is important once we have shown how we apply these vocabularies in the CAMSS context? Well, what is important to highlight is that we have the way, as for many other vocabularies in CEMIC or in WCC, we have the way to create solutions based on these vocabularies. And in the context of the CAMSS initiative, we are contributing to the development of interoperable architecture solutions portfolio. And such of this solution would be the CAMSS assessments. We have also the ELIS, which we are going to deep in the following minutes, but also we have the CART tool. Again, I'm going to show you a bit more about the specification of the core standards and specification vocabulary. So Romina, let's go to the next slide. Just to Again, I'm going to show you the Interoperable Europe portal for the solution. And we are going to jump into the HTML web page. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. So here we are. I think I'm sharing right now. So here there is the specification, which is the publication in the Interoperable Europe portal. And again, we have the different solution components. And once we click on the HTML components, we can be directed to the GitHub where we have hosted this web page. Again, emulating the CEMIC style guide. And well, again, we scroll down, we can have all the components of the specification. We have the different vocabularies that are being reused. And what we want to discuss now is once more the diagram. So again, we have different classes grouped in different colors. So for us, the yellow one is for representing the core elements of the core standards and specifications vocabulary. And the central class would be the specification. We have also the standard specification, which at the end is a subtype of the specification, the main class, as I was saying. But also we have other type of specifications which are also allowing us to model any reality in the implementation of solutions at e-government domain. So for example, we have the application profiles, but also we have the family of standards. Let's describe a little bit more how behaves this class specification. So again, we are reusing some vocabularies from the DC terms. A specification has a title. We can have an acronym or a short name, which is the alternative attributes. We have a description and so on. Of course, these specifications, we are defining them as other type of classes. So the specification is itself a subclass of the DCAT dataset. And at the same time, it's a subclass of the DCAT resource. So what allows us to do now? Well, this specification indeed would be possible to be published in a sort of distribution. So for example, here it is really well depicted. We can define different URLs that could address us to this specification distribution. But at the same time, we can say that this specification has a creator, or even directly we can say that it is maintained by SDO. And at the same time, we can say that it is recommended by a member state or any logical organization that could fit our purpose. Just to mention, it is important to say that the specification and also a standard, even though they are the same thing, we are trying to establish some constraint so that we can reuse as much as possible the vocabularies we have on our way. So for example, the standard, we know that there are some synergies with the DC terms vocabulary. So that's why we are describing also that they are subclasses of the DC terms standard class. And again, if we scroll down, we will find the rest of the specification below. So we have the different classes, properties, and attributes defined, and a bit of the rationale of this solution. Okay. Okay, then. So I'm going to stop sharing, Romina. And now we are going to go through for a more practical use case. Then, as we were mentioning, we have different solutions in CAMSS that are reusing these vocabularies. The most important one for us, the most relevant, is the ELIS, the EIRA Library of Interoperability Specifications. If we go next slide. So what we want to depict here is that, well, we are representing all these standards and specifications using these data schemas that the vocabularies, the specifications are providing us. And also we do the same with the core assessment vocabulary. What we've done is to represent in a specific data schema how an assessment should be represented. And for that, what we've done is to create the ELIS catalog. And at the end, what we've done with this catalog is firstly, we shortlist the different standards and specifications that we know that are relevant for the public administration context. So we give some format to these standards and specifications. And also part of our work is to assess these standards and specifications against a set of criteria, with mainly are the EIF, European Interoperability Framework core principles. And well, the output of this work is the compilation of all these standards and specifications with an associated assessment that we finally ultimately share with the seller repository of the publication office. So if we go to the next slide, Romina. This is really interesting that we can provide a machine-readable format of the ELIS, because at the end, once we have recognized a resource, such as a standard, we can identify it by URI, which is the Uniform Resource Identifier. And with this URI, what we can do is to discover what we have about this standard that we want to check with regards to the ELIS. So I think this could be a good opportunity to showcase a practical scenario. So I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to try to show you how that should be work. So now I'm sharing my screen again. What you can see is the Virtuoso SparkQL endpoint from the European Commission, and for that allow us to launch some SparkQL queries. So what I'm going to do is to insert this URI about a standard that we already know, which is the GraphQL. And then the usual process would be to define the different namespaces that are defining these all base data sets. And then we are going to request the title of the standard we want to shortlist, and also the different relations that there may exist in the ELIS catalog. So I'm going to run the query, and here it is. So what we are depicting here is at the end the different relations that exist with the standard. The very first ones are associations to the architecture building blocks from EIRA that Romina was introducing before. And at the end, we can see also extra association with an assessment. So this assessment is also a URI, which is representing this resource, which is the assessment. And again, we can continue to launch different SparkQL queries so that we can get the different attributes, properties that these entities possess. I think this is quite understandable, but I'm going to show you something more usual in the daily life. So why not? I'm going to show you how this query is done. So let me split the window. Just a second. Okay, so this query we have launched. At the end, what we are retrieving is the information that is contained in a data set in an RDF format, which is the format that we share with the seller repository. And at the end, as you may see, we are requesting, we are querying a URI, which is here, and we are asking for the title. And at the same time, we are asking for the different associations that this URI has in the data set. So this is the right side of the screen. What else? Well, this assessment, as I was saying, has the different properties and attributes. So again, we can launch another query so that we can retrieve some other pieces of information from the data set that is based on the core assessment vocabulary, which I'm showing right now on the left side. So for example, as you may see, this URI is the one depicted in here. We could extract what is assessing this assessment. So this is a URI for the standard, the GraphQL, but also we can extract the different title, the descriptions, or the different criteria that have been answered during the performance of the assessment. So for example, if I go through it, I'm going to extract this identifier for this criterion. Sorry. For example, we have here the results of these criterion. So as you may see, there are different statements that are going to explain why this criterion is positive or maybe negative with regards these EIF core principles that we are using on the base of the assessment. And again, we could be showcasing different criteria, but I think that we can stop here because this is too much technical, and maybe show you other kind of representation we could have from these vocabularies. So here, what I'm showing you is the most friendly way to show the ELIS dataset, which in the end, it is an Excel file. And as you may see, there are these components we were introducing before. We have, for example, the title of the specification, the GraphQL. In this case, we have the different associations with ERA. We have also the associations with regards the assessment. And again, you see that this is only possible by using the CAMSS vocabularies. I scroll down just to let you check a little bit more. But this would be, of course, we are happy to have any kind of questions with regards to this. Okay, I think, Romina, I can give you the floor now.
Thank you very much, Mario, for your explanation, theoretical, but also the applicability of both vocabularies and also the synergies with the ELIS. You indeed were mentioning a bit the some space for questions. In the meantime, if you can start thinking about it, we have a dedicated Q&A session at the end. Before that, though, just let me address the final chapter of our presentation related to the potential of CAMSS vocabularies, more in an extensive way, of course, related to interoperability. As has been showed by my colleague Mario here, there's multiple potential, multiple applicability. And in this sense, we would like to share more the positioning of both vocabularies in relation to the design and the development of interoperable systems at the basis of digital public services. Just to recap, in the end, the applicability, I believe, showed enough how those vocabularies can play an important role in assuring, but also controlling the quality of data and information that will then be at the basis of standards and specifications. As you can see from these quadrants, summing up a bit their positioning, and also how they can support a broad spectrum of stakeholders, depending also on the roles they have, but also on the use cases, on the multiple scenarios they can be involved into. So you may be a business analyst or an enterprise or solution architect that work, for instance, in the implementation of digital services in a specific policy domain, or in a domain agnostic scenario, or even in a cross domain infrastructure services, or you may used to be a ICT procurer. And in this case, picture a scenario where you work in the identification of assessments and standards specifications for instance a public procurement process. So here multiple use cases that can be where both vocabularies can be applied, or where other CAMSS solutions, other solutions that are also rely on the vocabularies, can be helpful. Not only the assessment of standards and specifications, but also the identification and the short listings of these specifications to then undergo an assessment, and also applicability to more recent, let's say, needs, for instance, the binding requirements assessment. So to kind of sum up some strong points that we have showed throughout the presentation, and this are basically the key points we would like you to take away with you, important aspects related of the usage of both vocabularies in the end can be summed up, as you can see in the slide, in an announcement. So in a quality that is not only assurance but also controlling, and thanks to this accuracy and the consistency of using and reusing standardized vocabularies, you can also rely on combination and integration of data that also come from already existent and authorities and ontologies, and this way also they are combined in a way that communicate with a machine readable format, and this of course can be a point of strength when collaborating cross administration and also cross domain. That's another key point related to this, is also the domain agnostic nature that kind of by default provides some flexibility depending on your different needs, and the needs that you're going to identify related to your standards and specifications, regardless of the timing you are on the moment you would need to perform this assessment. And speaking of performing assessment, just one point that was also mentioned before is related to the Interoperability Europe Act. So as you probably know, as of January this year, binding requirements for interoperability are now mandatory for any new or revised regulations. So this is kind of a like burning topic that's very important, and probably Article 3 is one of the most important and prominent articles in the Act. And on the basis of that, as a food for thought, we were reflecting on how the core vocabularies can potentially support you in the application of this article. And thinking of, for instance, the core assessment vocabulary and departing from the point of strength of the domain agnostic nature that also colleague Mario showed you how it can be advantageous for you, starting also from the consistency, so the applicability of this domain agnostic nature, regardless of the domain you're involved into. We thought that potentially this vocabulary can have multiple supports to the interoperability assessment. For instance, it might be reference, a vocabulary of reference when defining the requirements that the interoperability assessment should have, or can also be can act as a foundation for defining the different interoperability assessment frameworks during the evaluation process of your digital assets against some predefined criteria. And last but not least, the another important feature related to CAV, but also CSV, meaning the machine readability format it provides, so this common language to exchange data. This can also be another applicability. The Act itself mentions that all results of interoperability assessment must be reported in a machine readable format, and here the vocabulary can provide this initial concept for the elaboration of the results. So as you can see, some food for thought related also to these very important act to be taken into account. And with that, we conclude the final point related to our presentation. So here we have more a session dedicated to some Q&As. And for this, I'm going to also leave the floor to my other colleague, Mario. Here.
Thank you, Romina and Mario, for the presentation, and thank you all for joining us today. And now it's time for our Q&A part. And this is your opportunity to ask any question or to make any appointment you might have about the topics that we have covered. You can ask directly here, or if you prefer, you can put your questions in the chat and we will answer it. We know that it could be difficult to start a discussion, and we have prepared some questions to foster it. Romina, if you go to the Slido.
Yes.
You can enter the Slido by typing or scanning the code. So this section will consist on two parts. For one hand, we will see two closed questions, and on the other hand, there is an open question. However, if you want to add something beyond the options in the closed questions, you can do so without any problem. And while you are entering the Slido, let me introduce a little bit this part. This question explores how both vocabularies can address some of the new regulations in terms of interoperability, as we have mentioned before, but also other topics such as how these vocabularies could help to improve the public sector, taking into account the merging of new technologies and new technological needs. And we also would like to know whether these vocabularies could be useful in other environments, and whether providing support for developing specialized vocabularies in specific contexts could be useful. So at final, we aim to understand if such support could enhance clarity and communication in particular fields or situation or context.
I'm going to launch the first question,
Yes.
so you can get as well ready.
Okay, you have the first question. How would you see a potential applicability of CAMSS vocabularies in your working environment?
There's someone else typing, I believe, but we've already
Yes.
received quite some interesting answers already.
I think that we can move to the next question if you want, Lumina.
Mhm.
This question is about the deployment of CAMSS vocabularies in other contexts. So it's a closed question, but if you want to share your opinion in the chat or after, you can do it.
Very positive answers, I would say.
If you want, Lumina, we can. I think that we can move to the
Yes.
next and the last. And it is also a closed question, and it is about the new regulations in terms of interoperability. And the question is it, do you think that CSSV and CAP vocabularies could enable efficient implementation of the Interoperable Europe Act?
I see some positive feedback here as well. I also noticed that some answers to our first open question were related to Interoperable Europe Act and the applicability of the vocabularies to the assessment. So it's also very good to hear about this useful perception that you have. I believe, Mario, most of people have answered, unless there's some last minute answer you have.
Yes, if you want to put any question in the chat or ask here, you can do it.
Or maybe if you want to also elaborate more on the first open question that you shared,
Yes.
also more than welcome. Seems there are no further clarifications, but that's understandable. It's okay. I mean, either we made it to explain it super well, but of course we understand also these are very complex concepts that required some time to be processed. So makes total sense also to have a understanding. This is also the reason we are recording these sessions, so that you can have you're gonna have it at your disposal, and you can check it at your own pace together with the presentation. So I believe we can approach the end of this session. And aside from thanking you for this, we would also like to remind our CAMSS collection, our email address, so that you can also reach out to us whenever you have any doubt or question related to this vocabulary, but also the other CAMSS solutions that my colleague Hector has shared the links to. So these are also our contacts, and we are more than welcome also to explore any possible collaboration you would like to check with us, related also to the vocabularies or other types of solutions. So that being said, I thank you again for your participation, and look forward to see you to the next webinar upcoming, and wishing you a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Many thanks.
Many
Thank you very
thanks.
much.
Bye.
Bye.